Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Arts Council's YourTown TV. Thank you for joining us today. We have renowned leaders in the arts and cultural areas that make our region so renowned for its leadership and diversity in the arts. Joining me today are three outstanding leaders in the arts, and we have a very special one right now, Walt de Faria, renowned theater, producer of film and television, and author. Welcome, Walt.
Good to be here.
So you've had a very long and distinguished career in the arts.
I'm old, yes, that's true.
So how did that inspire you? How did you begin? What were your first encounters with the theater and film?
I think I started when I was 7.
Oh my God.
I used to turn a card table upside down, hang lights, take my sister's cutouts and make up plays. But my real start began as a page at CBS. A page is an usher. It's a fancy term for an usher.
And those were in the early days of television?
Literally when radio was making the transition to I used to answer the telephone backstage for George Burns and Gracie Allen.
Oh, and what was it like knowing those renowned comics?
Well, they were, they weren't exactly your best friend because you were there to help. And although Gracie was fantastic. But, that was a lot of fun. You learned a great deal. Mm-hmm. It was like going to school.
And then what did you do about going to school? Did you pursue the arts and theater?
Technically, wherever I went to school, I always was involved in the arts. But I never majored in any courses. In fact, I've got a BS, Bachelor of Science from St. Mary's College in Moraga.
Okay, so then how did you transition from the sciences, which are so prevalent today in our society, into the arts?
Well, I was always looking for an angle, and as I say, that first job at CBS was the beginning. Which I followed a line of promotions. Mm-hmm. Really, you just move you hear of opportunities. While I was there, for example, there was an opening at KMJ TV in Fresno, brand new station. So I applied, got a job there, worked my way up to a writer, producer, director at that little station. Then eventually ended up in LA working for Disney on the Mickey Mouse Club, where they had something called the newsreel division, which is where I was. I wasn't with the fancy people. I was doing the background stuff.
So that sounds like that might be good advice for any young person wanting to get into the arts and theater and film. Start where you're most needed and demonstrate your skills and work yourself up the career ladder.
Nowadays, of course, there are a lot of schools that you go to learn the business. And I don't say those aren't great, but there's nothing like being on the job and learning it firsthand from other people who are doing it.
So your career has had a large influence in both children and adult productions.
Yeah, I've done family material from the very beginning. And here in the theater group, which is what I've done a lot in the Carmel area, we've worked with kids of all ages, from grammar school right up to high school, college. And the real thing that I've loved to do is mix them. Try to bring together young kids with older kids so that they learn from one another, really.
So we say at the Arts Council, one of our mantras is that the arts are the answer. So working with children, how have you seen the arts influence their own personal and group development?
Well, that's exactly what happens all the time. Because you get a lot of kids. I can remember one little girl who was in one of our shows, who was frightened to death. Her mother held her hand all the way up to the stage until about 3 weeks in, her mother was bringing her, and she said, "You don't have to go any further, Mother. I'm fine. They're waiting for me." And so she ran in, and from that point on, she got the confidence to keep going. You know what you do learn, if nothing else, you don't have to go into theater just because you're involved in the arts, but the self-confidence you're given just by being up there in front of an audience is amazing. You just watch kids totally transform from being shy and hesitant to being outward and amazing.
So in those scenarios, the children have to learn to memorize lines. They have to learn stage directions. They have to learn collaboration and teamwork. How have you seen that?
Well, that's the fundamental thing that they do learn, is that they have to learn how to work with a group.
Yes.
You know, I mean, everybody wants to be a star, and you can stand out in certain situations. But even if you are, you still have to be able to be comfortable working with everyone. And the one thing that you get from the kind of things that I've been doing is just that. These kids have learned a lot of little things, and not the least of which is how to work as a group.
And what kind of success with an individual child can you point to that later on in life they blossomed into something?
Well, there are some youngsters that started out with us who've gone on to Broadway and have done work there. There's a couple that I can think of. That one right now that has been working in Wicked for about 5 years, who was a little girl, and one of the first shows she ever did was one that we did here in Carmel. So it happens. It's rare, you know, because the dedication it takes to go that far is pretty heavy. But that doesn't in the least bit put down the amount of experience and help you get from just being involved.
Yes.
You don't have to worry about whether you're going to make it to Broadway.
No.
What you have to worry about is, are they going to get something positive out of the experience? And I think they do.
Yes, we've seen that over and over at the Arts Council and our Professional Artist in the Schools program. So what would you say are the major differences with working with the children versus working with adults? You've done a number of adult theatrical performances that I know here, pieces in the peninsula.
Yeah, quite a few. In fact, the late Stephen Tosh, who was my partner, we did 10 musicals for young people. And so we worked, some of the cast, by the way, had 83 kids in it. So there were a lot of kids involved. And the good thing about that is we helped a lot of kids rather than just a few. You know, I don't want to make it sound like we start out with the noble intention of helping youngsters. We just start out with the intention of doing shows where youngsters could be involved and where they'd get something out of it. So, and they did. We had so many shows where kids would learn something from just being in them. And we worked, as I've said, with an awful lot of kids from the very beginning. So it's been a positive thing for me. And what do they learn? The good thing, I think, is the youngsters really learn a lot from having a chance to operate with older actors and older performers. Because I always try to do that. We always try to mix the two wherever possible. And most of the shows we did, we try to have youngsters playing youngsters and then bring adults in when you have an adult role. And it's more like life as opposed to being 8 years old and pretending like you're 90, which in itself is something else, but, you know.
So we have the magic of theater, but you've also worked in the magic of film. Tell us about some of your film experiences.
Well, the film, I think there's been some exciting animation films that I've been able to do, and a couple of live ones with, a lot of it has to do with a project called The Borrowers, which I've owned the rights to for many years. And we've done television specials, movies, animated films, all based on that one property. So it's been an amazing experience with that.
And tell us, for people who are not sure what the Borrowers are.
Okay, The Borrowers is a series of books written by a woman named Mary Norton in England. And they're about the little people who live under your floorboards who borrow all those things that go missing, like socks. And so it's like a parallel world. And they live under your house and they're doing things all the time when you just don't know it.
And what was some of the outcomes of the Borrowers? Tell us one little story with what did they find that was so amazing? And
well, actually, you see, most of those stories were Jeopardy stories, where their main concern was how to exist and not get eaten by a cat.
Oh my gosh! So that would have a wide appeal to young children.
Oh yeah.
So what do you like about film versus working in theater?
Well, film is exciting. There's no question of that. But theater, you're able to work directly face-to-face with people. Secondly, the reaction you get, you do this, in the hopes that someone will appreciate it, meaning an audience.
Right.
And the thing that you get with a play is a live audience that tells you right now whether it was good or bad. A film, you make the film, a year and a half goes by, and eventually it gets distributed, and you're not sitting in every audience listening to them either love it or hate it.
Right, right. So how did you get involved in film? I mean, we talked about your involvement in theater, and how did you transition?
Well, it was progressive because here again, it's this Borrowers was first. I had people from England come over and say, we want to make a television series for the BBC based on it. So I got involved producing that. And that then from the television special, another group in England wanted to do a film. And because it just seemed, it would work well. So we did a film with John Goodman and a group of other people.
Right.
And then eventually a Japanese firm wanted to do an animated film based on it, which we did.
Great. And so what are you involved with now? What are the current projects that are
I'm
keeping
retired,
you busy?
or I'm semi-retired.
Yeah.
I'm retired. The next project for me is something I started last year, which is called Carmel Pops. It's an attempt to bring together the Carmel High School Orchestra, a ballet company, and then other acts to present something a little different than the usual just a straight play or a straight musical comedy.
So tell us about that. The students are rehearsing now, or?
Well, they'll start rehearsing for this. The high school kids begin rehearsing when they come back in September. They're learning now, but rehearsing for the specific show wouldn't start till September.
And it'd be performed at the high school's Performing Arts Center?
No, at the Outdoor Forest Theater.
Oh, great.
The last weekend of October, God help us with the rain.
Oh, yes, right. Now that theater has been renovated spectacularly.
Yeah, it's really much better.
And any other project on the horizon? What are you doing now?
At the moment, no.
And so how are you filling your days in retirement?
Writing a little.
What are you writing about, may we ask?
Well, there's some scripts that I want to write, and actually also updating my a kind of a book about what I've done for my kids. I mean, I do a kind of a, it's like a history, if you want to call it that. I'd done one before, but I stopped it after. So I'm trying to pick up from the year that I quit that one and bring it up to date.
So if you had some words of advice for either children or adults about today's current television, theater, film environment, what would you say?
Well, it's changing tremendously. With the advent of electronic gear, you still have to learn the basics before you can get fancy. And the biggest advice you give is, don't dodge around and say, I want to be a leading man or leading woman in something right now. You really should have the patience to learn just basic theater, and then you can move on to all these other things that are really exciting, what's happening, because it's going to change. I mean, movie theaters as we know them today are really on their way out, and it's going to be a different world.
Now you say that, and we've had a lot of very popular and really award-winning films in this past year.
Well, I belong to the Academy and vote, but that doesn't mean that the form of how they're going to be presented isn't changing. In other words, theater attendance is down. It's been coming down, and without getting too deep into the woods here on this, it's simply undergoing some changes. And the medium that we will be watching these marvelous films on could be theaters, but it might be a lot more.
When you say a lot more, because I had discussions with my students, I'm a communications professor, about how I grew up going to the movie theater on a Saturday matinee as a young
did that
child.
too.
And they all grow up watching Netflix or cable,
right.
or their iPhones or any phone or tablet, etc. There's a magic of the theater presentation.
Well, the industry is changing, really changing, because they're scared. They're scared about losing audiences to those things that have been standard, and it is changing. Kids nowadays are very happy to watch a spectacular movie on a little tiny screen. When we were excited to watch it on a 70 millimeter huge theater, but that's a difference in taste, and I'm hoping some good comes of it because I preferred the theater.
Of course. And so words of advice I'm hearing from you today is that anyone who aspires or not to the theater or film, being part of a theatrical production teaches you so much that it sets you on a path in your life, whatever career, or in the arts, whatever career.
Yep. That's it. And that's you said it better than I did.
No. Well, we try to teach diversity and being able to follow your path, but to develop the skills that help you along the way. And that's why our mantra is the arts are the answer in so many ways.
Oh, yeah.
And so your last words here on this program of advice or what you would like to say about your hope for the future in the arts?
Well, what I really would hope kids will do is grab every opportunity from grammar school to middle school to high school and beyond where they can get into something like theater or some form of it, because it'll give them a basis for the future no matter what they go into. They're going to learn all the things that we think are important in life to help us be better people.
Yes, including the sense of self-esteem that is so important.
Especially that.
And especially also to pronounce and enunciate and public speak in a way that's not cluttered with ums and ahs and and all of that. So, Walt, we have the honor at the Arts Council for this year's Champions of the Arts Gala. You will be recognized for your lifetime achievement. What does this award mean to you?
Well, it's a little, kind of almost embarrassing because you go, what have I really done that was that great? But listen, I'm delighted to accept it. And it means a lot. It really does, because it makes you feel that some of the things you may have been doing all these years that you sort of took for granted have some meaning.
It's our way at the Arts Council in front of the more than 400 plus guests, which Walter Rice in the Weekly has called the Golden Globes of the Central Coast. It's our honor to honor you and to recognize all that you have contributed to the arts in our region. Thank you so much, Walt, for your lifetime of dedication.
Thank you.
And please join us for our next segment, and thank you for being with us today.